Welcome to the Food Junkies podcast. Here, we aim to bring you the experience, strength, and hope of professionals working on the front lines in the field of food addiction. Our mission is to educate you, the listener, and increase overall awareness about food addiction as a recognized disorder. Here, we discuss all things recovery, exploring the many pathways people take towards abstinence in order to achieve a health-forward lifestyle. We hope to inspire you to thrive rather than just survive. So stay positive, make a change for yourself, and share your journey with others. And hopefully the message will spread.
Welcome to the Food Junkies podcast. My name is Dr. Vera Tarman, and I am your host today, speaking with Esther Kane, MSW. She is a British Columbia-based psychotherapist with nearly 30 years of experience supporting highly sensitive people, or HSPs, who struggle with emotional eating and food addiction. Esther is also an author and creator of the YouTube channel Compassionate Conversations, where she speaks directly to highly sensitive people who feel overwhelmed, misunderstood, or stuck in patterns like emotional eating and food addiction. Esther helps HSPs understand why food often becomes a source of comfort, how to create more calm, trust, and choice around eating and emotions. So welcome back, Esther.
Thank you, Vera. It's so great to be with you again.
You were here with us 3 years ago, and you spoke to us then about your practice with clients dealing with eating disorders and food addiction. Today, I would like to focus on the role of highly sensitive people in both eating and addiction and recovery. So what got you interested in working with highly sensitive people?
Most of you listening probably know the feminist slogan, "The personal is political." So that is, I am a highly sensitive person, always have been. And I also struggled with life-threatening eating disorder in my teens and my early 20s. And then I would say it's moved into emotional eating and food addiction after that. That's how, and over the last 29 years, I've worked with so many people with eating issues, eating disorders, food addiction, emotional eating. And I noticed this pairing of high sensitivity. So not all of my clients that have struggled with food have been highly sensitive, but I would say the majority of them. So I just got really curious about that and what it is about highly sensitive people that makes them prone to this sort of behavior with food.
You define what actually is a highly sensitive person as compared to somebody else who might be socially anxious or be responding to trauma or have ADHD.
Yeah. I have to preface everything I'm saying by talking about Dr. Elaine Aron. She is the researcher on high sensitivity. Her and her husband have been studying high sensitivity for over 40 years now. So Dr. Elaine Aron, her website is hsperson.com. That's hsperson.com. And she is the guru on all things high sensitivity. But basically, a highly sensitive person is someone who processes emotions and sensory input more deeply than most. So it affects 15 to 20% of the population, and they have found it in all species on Earth. So it's not just humans that are highly sensitive. So Dr. Elaine Aron, her groundbreaking book was called The Highly Sensitive Person, How to Thrive When the World Overwhelms You. And that book changed my life and so many other people's lives. She has an acronym. It's called DOES, depth of processing, overstimulation, emotional responsiveness and empathy, and sensitivity to subtleties. So our brains are wired differently as highly sensitive people. Our nervous system is more attuned to physical, emotional, and social stimuli. So we get overwhelmed and overstimulated on the regular. I interviewed Dr. Judith Orloff recently. She's the one that coined the term. She wrote the Empath's Survival Guide. So she coined the term empath. And she said that basically it's like everybody else, if you have 5 fingers, most people just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But for an HSP, if you look at the 5 senses, each finger is like 1,000 times more stimulated than other people's fingers. So we have a lot going on in the nervous system, and it doesn't always show on the outside, but it's like a duck in water. That's the analogy I use a lot. Looks really calm on the surface, but underneath the feet are going 100 miles an hour.
When you describe this, that to me defines a person who's introversion versus extroversion. So how is that different? Or are introverts usually highly sensitive people?
So Elaine Aron has done research on this and has found 30% of highly sensitive people are extroverts.
Oh
So
my,
70% of us are introverts. So I'm the introvert HSP version, but one of my best friends, she's an extroverted HSP, and we look like night and day. It's a completely different package that you get with something like that. Yeah. So she can go to parties and be stimulated and have lots of people around her, but she's sensitive to noise and taste and lighting and all those other physical sensitivities, but she can party, whereas I just can't do it.
How is that different than ADHD? Because when I think about an extroverted, highly sensitive person, I think, is that ADHD?
There's a lot of crossover. Like a lot of people think that autism and HSP resemble each other to some extent. And then you get the ADHD. Today, I didn't sleep well and I'm anxious doing this interview. So I'm buzzing inside. I've got that, I call it speedy energy. I don't like the word anxiety. I like speedy energy, which comes from a book called Why We Meditate by a Tibetan monk and Daniel Goldberg, who wrote Emotional Intelligence book. Yeah, we get this speedy energy, but it's very different. It doesn't go on forever and we can focus. So it just have a really good focus.
Okay.
So I think that's the big differentiating point between those two. The thing is, we're living in a time when there's so many labels out there and it's driving me nuts. Everybody's got a label for everything. And I have clients that come to me that are HSPs and then they come in the next week and they say, oh, I've just been diagnosed as autistic too. Oh, and I'm ADHD. It's really, I don't want to say that is not the truth, but it just seems to me these labels are being handed out like psychotropic drugs. It's just, everybody's got a label now. It didn't used to be that way. And I'm not against labels if they empower the client. If that person feels empowered because they have a name for something, go for it. Great. But if it makes you feel like there's something wrong with you, you're somehow defective, and that you don't measure up, then I think it's problematic.
How about the HSP? Is that another label? You're saying that it's not a defect. It's just a different wiring.
It is a different wiring. So I believe it's very different. It's a biological trait. So it's a biological trait researched by Dr. Elaine Aron. It's a different wiring of one's nervous system, which makes the five senses much more pronounced. So I found it life-changing when I discovered her book and realized what was going on with me, because I had been diagnosed as anxious. And I had an anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety disorder. That was what they told me. And possible depression and eating disorder. I had a few slapped on me right when I was quite young.
Is there like a 20 questions of, are you an HSP?
Absolutely. And I think it's about 20 questions. It's on Elaine Aron's website. That's the first thing you'll see is a quiz. And I have it on my website. Yeah. So if you go to Esther Kane. Yeah. So things like do bright lights bother you? Do loud noises startle you? Or do you have a big startle response? Like me, even if I know a client is coming in the door, I will never be holding a cup of tea because I can't tell you how many times I throw it all over myself because I jump. Startle response, often bothered by noises that other people don't notice. Like I have to put on a white noise machine when my husband eats.
Oh, wow. How many of these do you have to do to qualify? Like just 3 out of the 20 or something?
No, I think it's most of them. And the other big one is, do you need a lot of alone time to recharge your batteries?
And do you extroverted HSP?
Even the extroverted HSP, they still need a lot of alone time.
Thinking about myself, when a patient comes in and they haven't showered, I notice it before anybody else.
Really? Smell?
Yeah, smell. The fire truck, when it goes by, I'm the one that has to stop and cover my ears. And other people, I don't know how they can just keep walking.
Yes. Maybe you're highly sensitive.
I don't know. It depends on how many of them. But I do find that some sensations, the noise, the radio that's playing in the next door neighbor's house bothers me.
Right. So you should check into it. And are you moved by music and literature and the arts? That's a big one for HSPs. Are you very spiritual? Do you feel others' pain? If someone else is suffering, do you feel like it's yours? Do you feel that you have to help save people and small animals? And
Those are great questions.
When I found out about the HSP trait, it really got me thinking that if it's a biological trait and Elaine Aron is saying there's nothing wrong with you, that 15 to 20% of the population of humans have this, and that there's a biological reason. So the HSPs tend to be the spiritual leaders, the thinkers, the wise elders in some communities. They're the ones that are very introspective. They don't say a lot, but they're thinking, they're watching, they're observers, and they're the ones that bring peace often when there's fighting. So we need HSPs. We're very important. But unfortunately, our society doesn't understand us. So we're labeled as being weird or different or weak. We'll get to that. I know there's more questions.
Well, common misconceptions that HSP clients bring to you that you have to dispel.
Yeah. So I just touched on this, but because we're a minority, the majority culture views us as being too sensitive, too much, or fragile, needing to toughen up. And this is unfortunate. I grew up with a mother you've met who we're very different. My mother is an extrovert. She's out there. She's loud. She's opinionated. And she was a writer, journalist. She was on the radio. So I always compared myself to her and thought there was something wrong with me. And I think she honestly thought there was something wrong with me, not to blame her, but she was concerned about me because I was very withdrawn. And unfortunately, there's so many variables. So your family of origin, the culture you grew up in, the larger society. Susan Kane, I'm sure listeners have probably heard about her. Love her. Yeah. And that book, Quiet.
You think she was an HSP?
I think Susan Kane is definitely. Yeah, I've heard her interview. She said she was. And usually the two go together, introverts. I know that, so it's genetic. So I got it from my dad. My dad he's an artist. He's a musician. He's very spiritual. He thinks about all kinds of things that are outside the realm of normal, supposedly. And he's so attuned to people and animals too. HSPs, we are amazing with animals. I see you have a cat on your lap, but I came to your office in person. That was so wonderful. You had 4 cats and a dog. We attune very much to animals.
What I found interesting about what you said is you said animals themselves can have an HSP trait. And I think of my 3 cats, one of them is a real, what I called introvert.
Yeah.
Just people come, she's away. She has all sorts of weird behaviors when she's upset.
Yeah. She's trying to regulate. So she's probably dysregulated when visitors come. HSPs, like we really like to know the lay of the land. We like routine and we like structure. And I've always been made fun of because of that. But at this point, I don't give a shit anymore because it's working for me and my life is good. But we're very misunderstood. And it said on my report card, I saw my mother gave me my report cards from childhood recently. It was so funny. And one of them said that basically that when they go to the pool, that I would slide across the wall. I kept my back on the wall and I would just slide on the perimeter of the wall all the way around, but I did not want to go in the pool. And that kind of describes an HSP, I think. And yet recent research has shown, and I'm going to have this gentleman on my show, Tracy Cooper, who's studied highly sensitive people who are also high sensation seekers. So Elaine Aron discovered up to 50% of HSPs are high sensation seekers. That is bizarre.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like it's a self-sabotage in the making.
But the difference between a regular high sensation seeker and an HSP high sensation seeker is the HSP is much more calculated about the risks. They do a lot of research before they dive into something scary or dangerous.
Is this a condition, HSP, that can be cured, or is it really just managed, or it's a special quality that makes a person unique?
I picked door number 3. This is a special quality that makes a person unique. And I have a YouTube channel, Compassionate Conversations, and I've got 2 videos that are going somewhat viral for the HSPs in the world, which I'm thrilled about. And it's one of them that is done really well is the thumbnail has a superhero flying above me, and I'm pointing it to that person. So I like to focus on superpowers, high sensitivity as a superpower, and it expresses itself in attention to detail, creativity, being able to tune into others' emotions and needs, etc. We have superpowers, and used the right way and framed in the right lens, we can soar, but we need to have an empowerment lens for that. And we have to, one of my goals on this earth is to basically help HSPs to realize, to first heal from this myth that there's something wrong with them. And then to
not
really
pathologize it. Yeah.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong. It's a biological trait, and that you have superpowers. And then to help them have agency over their lives and their bodies, because they often get diagnosed with mental health issues and medicated, which I believe a lot of that could be prevented if they knew how to work with their sensitivity better.
In your experience, what parts of being highly sensitive most predict vulnerability to compulsive eating?
Yeah, for me, I think the person is political. I think it's far more powerful to talk about myself because I've struggled a lot with food and my own addictions around that. For me, as an HSP, there was so much stimuli that was calling my attention, and it was too much, and I would get overstimulated that when I ate, emotionally ate, binged or whatever, I could numb out, and it would act like a numbing agent for my senses, really. Yeah. So it turned the dial down on overstimulation and emotional intensity. And I think working with thousands of HSP clients with food issues, same thing. And also, I think low self-esteem and being told that there's something wrong with you, feeling like you're inherently wrong or bad, which so many people who are othered end up feeling like, leads you to self-harm often. And because HSPs, we don't want to hurt anyone else. We're the most loving, giving people on the planet. The last thing we want is to hurt somebody else. In one study, they found that an HSP couldn't tell the difference between their own emotions and someone else's. It's because of mirror neurons in the brain that are way more reactive in HSPs. So we literally just don't want to hurt anybody, so we hurt ourselves. And Judith Orloff, in the Empath Survival Guide, I just took a little quote from her. She talks about empaths and emotional eating, and I think there's some parallels. She said, because empaths feel emotion so deeply, they may turn to food for comfort or to soothe the intensity of emotions, both their own and those they've absorbed from others. That's the other piece. We absorb everything. Yeah. We absorb everybody's emotions, and we process things. Like if we have an argument with someone, the next day we're processing for 4 hours, whereas that other person's just living their life.
It's interesting that sometimes
some people are mistaken
for autism, but yet this seems almost the direct opposite of autism, where that's a person who doesn't really have a sense of the other person and has to learn how to mask and mimic. And the highly sensitive person is absorbing and has to learn how to distance.
Exactly. It's the complete opposite, isn't it? That's why I get so frustrated when I hear that. Yeah. And that's a very Google term. A search term is, what is the difference between autism and high sensitivity? A world of difference. Describe it, Vera, as I feel at times that I'm wearing my skin inside out. And everything sticks.
I would imagine that you might be seen to be like overly empathic and even people pleasing. That would be a struggle for you.
That's the number one thing, is that HSPs struggle from people pleasing. And I did one video about self-abandonment. What is self-abandonment? And then I did another one just for HSPs and self-abandonment, because we are the kings and queens of that. We self-abandon. Basically, we meet everyone else's needs, and that's our focus, and we throw ourselves under the bus constantly. Like, someone asked me, I was listening to a podcast, Terry Cole. She's wonderful. She wrote Boundary Boss. She's kick-ass. I love her. Just tells it like it is. This great therapist. She has a great podcast. And she was talking about high-functioning codependency.
Yeah.
High-functioning codependence. And I thought,
very same thing, codependency.
So she described me, right? And she said, you're always trying to save people. And then she said, and I was doing a walk outside listening to this, and she said, who would you be and what would you do if you weren't trying to save somebody? And Vera, I stopped dead in my tracks, and I thought, I don't know. That just blew my mind.
And is the reason because you've absorbed other people's emotionality to such a degree that you can't be yourself until there's safety, and that means you have to make sure they're safe first?
That's a very interesting, from a polyvagal perspective, that's a very interesting take on it. Yeah, but to make sure so for a lot of HSPs, unfortunately, they grow up in families where there's a lot of trauma and the parents aren't able to meet their needs for whatever reason, and they don't get them. Yeah, they get parentified a lot because they're like wise. I swear I came out of the womb like a French philosopher. I furrowed eyebrows. What is this all about? I was very deep and very serious. HSPs are accused of being serious, but we can be very funny. But yeah, unfortunately, we often get parentified because we're so mature when we're kids that people mistake us for mini adults. And we are very good at stepping into that role because we can sense what people need.
And you probably are the type of kid that likes adults more than other kids.
Absolutely. I was an only child and I just hung out with adults and my grandparents. And yeah, that was my jam.
Okay, so getting back to how you self-soothe yourself because you're facing the onslaught of a highly stimulating world. Food is one way to do that.
Yeah.
We use food because it has addictive, numbing components. So how do you now work with somebody who comes to you with an eating disorder?
This is where HSPs can tap into their superpowers regarding knowing what's going on in their bodies, because we are very aware of what's going on in our bodies. The problem is that due to dysregulation, constant dysregulation, because HSPs constantly dysregulated being in such a stimulating world, our body, we have mixed emotions about being in our body, because it doesn't have to necessarily be that you've experienced trauma, but being in our body sometimes can feel really hard. Yeah, so I help them to use these powers to differentiate what's going on with their hunger and cravings and whether it's emotional or physical. So I usually tap into, are they regulated? I start with teaching them how to regulate their nervous system, because they're using it for a reason, because they're trying to numb their body. But if you slowly teach someone how to feel safer in their body, they don't have to use a substance, whether it be food or anything else.
You talked about caregiving roles, how this chronic caretaking contributes to secret eating, resentment, and relapse. How does that happen?
Because they're taking care of everybody all the time and they're the last person on their list, and resentment builds up after a while.
Right.
There was a whole book written about highly sensitive people attracting narcissists and other toxic people.
Interesting.
We attract those people like moths to a flame. They find us because we have big ears, we listen, and we're empathetic and kind, and we're not going to be mean. And we let people have the stage. So a narcissist is, woohoo, this is fantastic. I've got a stage and I can dance around. This person's on my side. And so we have to be very careful with who we let into our heart. So I do a lot of work around boundaries with HSPs, lots of work.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So how do you do that? The person is not taking care of themselves. So food, that's their way to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And so you're saying, first of all, we got to get the boundaries, and then we have to have alternative ways to take care of ourselves. So tell me about the boundaries that an HSP has to be aware of.
Toxic people, like I said,
Yeah.
they get in and they really see that HSPs have a permeable barrier that they can get in easily. I say it's like a fishing net. Ours is too wide. We catch everything. We got to tighten it up so that we don't get everybody in there. And so I guess people who are watching can see this, but I'm doing a boundary thing where I've got my arms outstretched.
Yeah.
And then I turn in a circle, so 360 degrees. So I'll do this with a client in my office, where we stand up and twirl slowly and just feel somatically what it feels like when they imagine that person, the boundary breaker, the toxic person, and they're hit by a hand on one side and on the other side, bounce, and they can't come anywhere in between. Oh, people love this. It feels great. I'm doing it right now. I'm just thinking about all the people in my life. Yeah, it's fantastic. And the other thing is HSPs don't take up a lot of space. They're not used to, there's a lot of work on teaching them agency and to feel empowered and that they deserve to take up space. So this is one of those things that I can have this space 360 degrees around me where you can't get in, and it's my bubble. And that really creates a feeling of safety, but also empowerment. And separating yourself from others in a somatic way helps you to learn boundaries. Another exercise that a lot of people probably know about if they've been in therapy is you sit on the floor and you put a string around you in a circle around your body. And you can use stones to represent people and you put them outside that boundary. And you just really somatically feel what it's like to have that separation between you and others, that you don't have to let people right into your close space.
What about work boundaries?
That's a tough one. I just did the other video that's about HSPs and careers. I help so many clients negotiate career stuff, and there's a lot of nuance with noisy work environments. I just read an old book. It was by Ted Zeff. Unfortunately, he's passed away, but he wrote this book called The Highly Sensitive Person Survival Guide. It's really cute. It's a good book. He talked about all these things about noise, like wearing earplugs at work or a headset and having white noise filters, sound machines on, and negotiating space. If you've got a really loud, extroverted colleague sitting right by you, seeing if you can talk to the higher ups to get you moved into a corner. And ideally, a lot of HSPs do very well working from home, or at least part of the time working from home.
Yeah, I would imagine that environment where it's everybody's in one room, but with just things, it would be hell.
Open office.
Yeah, the open concept.
Now they don't even have cubicles. That is an HSP nightmare. It's like a human soup pot when the noises. You just think about the five senses and the overstimulation. A lot of my HSPs, and myself included, terrible that COVID happened. It was so awful. But to be honest, my husband and I are both HSPs. We both work from home. We were just fine. Like, we didn't miss people. We were quite happy with the world shut down. Not that that was a good thing, but I really felt for the extroverts and the non-HSPs, because they're like pack animals. They need to be people and feeding off the energy, right?
What about the assumption that you will take on? If I say to you, no, it's 5 o'clock, you can't go home because this has to get done.
Yeah. So a lot of HSPs hit burnout. Right?
Yes.
I can't tell you that. I can't even count on my hands how many times I burned out. But we learn through each episode of burnout what our boundaries are, and what we really, one reason I'm doing the podcast and the YouTube channel is because I've discovered my voice as an HSP. And I'm 54. It took me a while, but I finally discovered my voice, and I need to use it. I have to contribute because we have so much to contribute to the world. HSPs need to take their seat at the global table and include their piece. It's very important.
Yeah.
So knowing that you have a voice, finding your voice and using that voice. And I find that food addiction for a lot of people, emotional overeating, is a way to stuff down that voice, unfortunately.
You tell us more about that.
If you've been told there's something wrong with you, and that you're different and wrong, and your opinions don't count, and you're not going to voice it very much. Plus, we're much more comfortable listening than speaking usually, and we are so polite. We don't want to interrupt anybody. So a lot of people just blather on and on, I swear to God, just to hear their own voices, it seems to me. Yeah. And they don't often just get quiet for a minute to let the quiet person talk. It's like when you're driving on the highway, no one's letting you in from the ramp lane. They just keep speeding by you. You got to make space for quiet people to come to their own. But it's safety. You need to feel safe to speak.
Yeah.
The cute thing, I often tell this story, how my husband and I met. We were at this social gathering thing, and there were a lot of people. And
I can just imagine both of you are right by the door trying to get out.
Yeah. His brother brought him, and I was with his brother, but he was off chatting up some other woman. I was his friend. And I just kept looking at Nathaniel, my husband. He's like being all quiet, sitting there in a corner looking down. And I was doing that for about half an hour. I thought, this is crazy. And everyone else is blah, blah, blah. So I went up to him and I said, do you talk? And he looks up at me and he smiled and he said, only if someone's worth talking to.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, that is cool. So I said, I'll make it worth your while. Let's talk. And 27 years later.
That's a great story.
Hey, Food Junkies listeners. We're just going to take a quick break here to share with you something our team thinks could help benefit your recovery with food, body, or self. Thank you again for listening.
Hey there, Food Junkies listeners. This one might be for you, and it might be for someone who takes care of you. I want you to imagine a patient for a moment. They've tried every diet. They've followed every piece of advice their doctor gave them. They've white-knuckled it through restriction, shame spirals, and the crushing sense that if they just had more willpower, things would be different. They come to you exhausted, defeated, convinced the problem is them. But what if it isn't? What if what they're describing, the loss of control, the compulsive patterns, the inability to stop despite wanting to, isn't a character flaw? What if it's a clinical presentation that has a name, a framework, and a pathway to recovery? Ultra-processed food use disorder is changing how the most forward-thinking clinicians in our field understand and treat compulsive eating. And there is now a continuing professional development accredited training program built especially for healthcare providers, therapists, nutritionists, and coaches who want to work in this space with the tools and confidence to actually help. Practical screening, a biopsychosocial treatment model, case-based learning, up to 20 continuing professional development points starting at 150 pounds. And if you're a listener, not a clinician, who has ever sat in a doctor's office feeling ashamed, unheard, and told to just try harder, send them this episode. Share the link in our show notes, because the more providers who have these tools, the better care looks for every single one of us. Your patients are waiting for someone who gets it. Be that person. Link is in the show notes.
Now back to the show. If you have enjoyed this episode, please let us know. We love to hear from you. Kindly leave us a review on whatever platform you listen to our podcast on. We love getting feedback from our listeners.
All right. So what do you do now? A client comes into your office and I need to do boundaries, but what do I do? So what are some recovery techniques?
The first thing, I'm working on a book about helping highly sensitive people master their nervous systems.
Yeah,
so
that's the nervous system regulation.
Yes. So basically, I begin with all my clients with co-regulating, right, with them. If they don't feel safe with me and they're not feeling in their bodies, we can't do any work. And HSPs are so often very dissociated. And if they use food, that's often a way to dissociate as well, right? Because being in the body can be so uncomfortable. So I just start with just co-regulation. So just helping them to feel safe and just starting very slowly. And I start with family history because I'm a trained family therapist. But I start just the history of the family, a few generations. Then we'll start talking about being a highly sensitive person. And they find me relatable because I am a highly sensitive person, and I don't talk a lot about myself, but I am honest about the fact that I struggle too with it's my overstimulation and all the same things. So we start slowly, but I do a lot of just feeling safe in their body and notice if they have an emotion, like where do you feel that in the body? And let's just look at it as sensation and just allowing them to slowly. It's called titration. You go very slowly in little tiny bits. It helps someone feel safe in the body.
What you mean? It's like a desensitization process?
No, it's more of a sensitization. It's dipping in and out of what emotions feel like in the body and how they experience. That comes from somatic experiencing. Peter Levine, he talks about titrating and pendulation, which is dipping in and out of trauma. Someone with trauma, for example, you go very slow. Yeah. And you just do micro dosing, like just tiny bits of
into the trauma, into feeling the trauma.
Yeah, but such small things. And then you dip back into something that feels really good in the body. So first of all, I want to help people get grounded and have resources. So we build resources that they can use that make them feel good, like a really good. So for example, where's your happy place? Someone might say, so I live on Vancouver Island. It's when I'm in a forest and there's Douglas fir trees. They're so high and they're huge and they're all around me and I can feel the air. I know you really get into the sensations and what that feels like and then pair it with the emotions and the feeling that it gets so that can resource them.
So you titrate the negative emotion in a safe context so that they're able to withstand it more.
So then they know, okay, when I feel this yucky thing or scary thing, I can be a Douglas fir tree in the forest. I can go back there. And because HSPs, our senses are attuned, we can smell the trees, we can hear the birds, we can tune into all that readily. So it's really good to do that.
If a person has a problem night eating, addictive eating at night, can you use this tool? Or what would you do for somebody in that context?
I would want to know more about the energy.
I can give you an example because that's something that I used to struggle with. And it would be feeling anxious. Oh my God, it's 10 o'clock. I feel a bit of hunger. I don't know why, but I'm getting more and more anxious.
Yeah, so that's energy in the body. So what needs to happen with that energy would be my question. So often it's some somatic things you can do. Well, knitting, there's been a lot of research actually on crafting and knitting that actually calms the nervous system. So having a focus that's using your hands and occupying your mind and body, and the rhythmic, what really regulates the nervous system is rhythmic movement. So knitting needles click, this repetitive movement can be very grounding. Another simple one I use is holding a hot cup of tea. So if someone feels hungry, like having something that you can have in your mouth, but it's tea, it's not food, but the warmth of the cup, like just having your hands around the cup and just smelling it, like having a nice aromatic tea. And it's a lot of science about how calming it is to have tea, especially herbal tea at night. Staring at a fire, that one's so primitive. But if any of you have fireplaces, even if you just have a little heater that has fake flames, that will do. That's a primal thing. Sitting around the fire, people at night, that's what they used to do. They used to tell stories around the fire. Along those lines, reading a book, I often suggest, and something that's not going to stir you up emotionally, but something fun and light, or something that you're really interested in. But sometimes there's just too much energy in the body. So that's when I would recommend like doing some light yoga or going for a walk, moving the body.
If I thought about what of those things would work for me in that state, it's the warm tea. Just found that reading a book, I love to read, but if I'm feeling hunger, that will overwhelm my desire to read. But holding a hot cup of tea and drinking a tea slowly, savoring it, that does seem to help.
And the other thing I would address that's not somatic is, what are you hungry for? What if there's an emotional thing that you're hungry? What kind of day did you have? What just happened? Was there some event that was upsetting or troubling to you? And what would the food do for you? Would it bring comfort? Or do you want something crunchy because you're angry and you're hard? There's so many nuances with the kinds of foods that we're craving.
So you're focusing on the sensations that you might be responding to from the day and trying to work on that sensory level.
Since we talk about HSPs, we repress anger. That's our go-to thing. When we get angry, we shove that down. No, that's not coming out, right?
Yeah.
So anger and frustration. So there's this wonderful thing. I don't have it. I'm in my husband's office. My own office is being remediated, but it's called the Flex Bar, and it's a physio tool. And you can bend it. It's quite firm, but you can bend it and squeeze it and twist it. That is the HSP cure for when you're angry, because you're not hurting yourself. You're not hurting anyone else.
Yeah.
Because with HSPs, if we feel like we get out our anger, if we throw punch pillows, we actually feel bad for the pillows. And that can actually also overstimulate us. If we have animals, they might get scared, for example.
Yes.
And then we feel bad because animals are dysregulated.
Yes.
So we have to be and I call it the boomerang effect. We have to be so mindful of how we express anger. So something like that. And the other one is just pushing on a wall, having your feet planted firmly 45 degrees and just pushing on a wall as hard as you can until that comes up. And a lot of my clients will say, "Oh, I'm not angry." And I'll say, "Let's just pretend you're angry. Okay, we'll push against the wall together." Oh my goodness, they're angry. Yeah, it comes out.
Do you have anything to say about abstinence?
I find that because HSPs tend to like order and structure, they usually do better with complete abstinence of certain foods rather than trying and checking it out. Yeah. So they tend to be more abstainers, I find.
I would imagine that all highly sensitive people have very strong cravings.
Yes. For example, my thing was roasted salted cashews. I can't have those in the house. I can't look at them in the store. Cannot touch a cashew. There's certain foods like if you just don't have them, you're not going to eat them. So I find most of my clients, the HSPs tend to be abstainers. They do much better with just abstain. And it could just be like a lot of them don't eat sugar or grains, for example. Yeah, that they do quite well with that.
Okay. So if somebody comes in and does want to work on their food issues, do you deal with the nervous system regulation first, or do you get rid of the food first, tackle the food?
If you don't regulate the nervous system, you can't take away the drug of choice if they have nothing to replace it with. I'm talking probably more about people that are emotionally overeating, not necessarily pure food addiction. Yeah, I go for nervous system regulation and giving them not just somatics, but giving them other tools that they can use instead of using food. Yeah. And then eventually they get to the point where they just don't need the food. But we need to know what it is they're going for. What is it that are they trying to numb out? Are they trying to stuff an emotion? Depends on what it is, what they're using it for. So I don't try to take the food away right away. Yeah. There's developing the mindfulness around it, like being able to separate yourself somewhat from the substance and be able to watch yourself do that behavior. That's my first goal with someone like that. And you just get curious about it. And eventually that drops away because it's never about the food. But I think they need a sense of safety and connection. They need to feel that they're not alone, that they're understood, that there's nothing wrong with them. There's often a lot of unprocessed grief and sadness and loss. Food addiction, like I said before, some people just have to cut that food out.
It would mean that you'd have to do an initial history to diagnose or put people into what category they most likely are in. Okay, how would you define recovery for a highly sensitive person with a food addiction history? What does thriving look like?
In HSP, they have to do deep root cause healing. We are motivated by meaning and purpose. That is our driving force. We have to understand why something's happening and how to heal it. It uses a somatic trauma-informed approach, often because they've internalized the message that there's something wrong with them, and they have to learn how to establish a new, empowering, and safe relationship with their bodies. Yeah, it's going to go deeper. Probably not everybody needs to go that deep, but HSPs, they need to go deep. I have 2 degrees in social work, so I look at different systems in the person's life and how they affect their relationship with food. And yeah, there's usually so much family of origin work that has to happen and messages. So it's a long haul process. It's quick, solution focused, brief stuff.
No, it makes me think that in the 12-step world, we say it's a physical, psychological, and spiritual malady. And it sounds to me like the HSP has to really focus on the spiritual piece along with the
spirituality. I have yet to meet an HSP person who isn't deeply spiritual. Yeah, but that can be used to one's advantage. In the 12-step tradition, having a higher power is easy for an HSP. That's not a hard connection to figure out.
And for people who can't buy into the 12-step program, I usually tell them you just have to find a purpose in your life.
Oh,
something that speaks to your sense of meaning.
Yeah, and every HSP has that. I joke that I have this podcast and YouTube channel that would be very terrifying for most HSPs.
Yeah.
But I always joke that my why outweighs my fear.
My next question was going to be, please tell us about your podcast and your YouTube work. Tell us your why. Tell us about your podcast and your why.
Yeah. So it's not exclusively for HSPs. I also have a lot of stuff about emotional eating and food addiction on there, and body image, and menopause is another big area I'm very interested in helping women navigate. But yeah, mostly it's about highly sensitive people, and I tackle all things HSP. It's a learning curve, so people need to be patient with me as I go along, but I'm trying to figure out what people are looking for. And what feels my why about why I'm doing the channel is to help highly sensitive people realize that there's nothing wrong with them, that they're fabulous and wonderful as they are, and that they're not alone. They have a large community, 15 to 20% of the population across the world. Pretty good. It's billions of us. There's lots of HSPs, that they don't need to suffer alone, that there are other people like them doing, and we're so diverse. That's the other thing. I like to interview people. We have such different backgrounds and stories and interests, and that being an HSP, it's a blessing and a curse. I'm try to be a bit of a Buddhist, and they talk about, on the one hand, the 10,000 joys, and the other hand, the 10,000 sorrows. So being an HSP, blessing and curse, blessing, curse. I'm not going to lie, it's not easy to be me, be an HSP. It can be very challenging, but when it's good, I think it may be better than a non-HSP. I don't know.
Anything more you want to say about your podcast or your YouTube work? Why are you doing it? What's your why about it?
Because I want to prevent other people from suffering the way I did. I nearly died of an eating disorder. I was hospitalized twice for depression. I've been on antidepressants for more than half my life. And I think I've just learned in recent years that it was really nervous system dysregulation that I was dealing with. And if I had learned those tools when I was a lot younger, I think I would have been saved a lot of suffering.
Okay.
So many people suffering. HSPs, unfortunately, they have very high rates of depression and anxiety and all kinds of, they get a lot of labels. And they often, for example, most of them can't work a 5-day work week, but there's so many workarounds that you can do and to thrive as an HSP. And I just want to give HSPs those tools.
Yes. So what's next for you?
What is next? Possibly a book. Yeah, I love writing. And yeah, I love the YouTube stuff. I've been a therapist for 29 years and it's very emotionally intense work. I love it. But I also want to branch out, and I love writing and I love podcasting and yeah, just diversifying what I'm doing. And I want to reach more people.
If you could tell a younger version of yourself something about HSP, what would it be?
Yes, I wrote something down. There is nothing wrong with me. I'm perfect just the way I am. I deserve to be both seen and heard, and what I have to say matters. I have superpowers that I can use to heal myself and the world, and I'm not alone. 15 to 20% of the population is just like me, and that I will find my tribe.
That's beautiful. That's great. Thank you, Esther, for introducing the world of HSP into the food addiction community.
My pleasure.
Thanks for joining us this week on Food Junkies Recovery from Food Addiction. Make sure to join our Facebook group, Sugar Free for Life Support Group, I'm Sweet Enough. Molly and Clarissa are food addiction professionals who offer one-to-one counseling and group coaching through Sweet Sobriety. Please subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in today's episode, we'd appreciate you leaving us a review on your favorite platform. Your feedback helps grow our show and allows us to reach others who need to hear this message of recovery. Don't forget to pick up a copy of Dr. Tarman's book, Food Junkies. And as Vera always says, the power is ours.